This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and NIL Game Changers. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Great to have you with us on the show today. This half hour brought to you by Brewers Outlet. Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Imports, domestics, microbrews. The best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drink snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and hot every day. 6 great flavors of slushies. And now ready to drink cocktails. Jack Daniel's High Noon, great ones. Right? At Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury. The beverage, and the pickle bar, by the way, led by the Barrels and the Dills. Can never forget that. Indeed, second to none. Yeah, High Noon, Crown Royal, Jack Daniels, and, of course, the pickle bar. Once again, led by the Barrels and the Dills. Indeed, second to none. All at Brewers Outlet. Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Stock up now for final weekend of the NFL season. And stock up for the Orange Bowl. Yeah. It's quite the combination we got going here. Yeah. Okay.
We do have Neal now, Steve.
Yes, of course we do. Yeah. Hold on a second here. Well, we mentioned this half hour brought to you by Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. The great Neal Coolong joins us as we get ready for the final weekend of the NFL season. Neal, first of all, welcome. Happy New Year to you. It means a lot to have you.
Happy New Year to you guys as well. Thank you for having me.
The Steelers, to me in the past month, have proven that the NFL playoff number is too big. Your thoughts?
It's funny. I just got into a long conversation in regards to college football's playoffs, kind of what's happening there, the hoopla, celebrating everything for a quarterfinal win. What we're seeing this weekend is the downside of it. You know, obviously this is all in a straight line. You can't truly weigh one versus the other, but the desired effect here is to have games when the intensity is at its highest. Adding games counterintuitively takes away from that because you get this weekend when you have to kind of reshuffle the whole schedule and you look at the whole deck, there's a bunch of teams playing a meaningless game. Now, I know we've had this conversation before, and usually it's in line with the Pro Bowl. Football is not an exhibition game. Football is the most active sport. You can't play it for fun. You can't play for nothing. It's got to mean something. They do a lot. It's a high-risk, high-contact, high-intensity game. To not really have it matter to the fans, you know, keep that in mind. I'm not suggesting the players don't have a lot to play for. Coaches are coaching for jobs. Players are playing for contracts. But the fan is looking at, you know, the idea of wanting their team to lose so they can increase their draft stock.
I know.
That's really about it. And what is that? Is that fun? Is that enjoyable? At this point, it just feels very long for way more than half the league. Now, there's some fun in there. You know, you get some interesting matchups and who's going to finish where. But keep in mind, it's not common to have two, 14-win teams heading into the last weekend of the season. When you have that playing for the number one seed in the NFC, there's something to play for. But then there's, I don't even know, whoever the Panthers are playing this weekend, I'm sure that game doesn't matter a whole lot.
I don't think they know either.
So,
I don't think they know either.
Now maybe not. Now it just seems bloated, But when you think about adding another game, how exciting it is, that's awesome in September. It just, and again, you can't physically weigh the game anymore, but you want the game to be more stacked at the beginning than at the end. At the end, it doesn't really matter. We know who's in the playoffs. And every year, there's not going to be a guarantee that there's going to be a high leverage type of situation in the league for fans to be interested in. But we can say for certainty, more than half of the league, the game doesn't matter at all. And that includes some playoff teams. So then you've got Saquon Barkley is on the doorstep of a long-standing record that they're not even going to go for.
Right.
What fun is that? You're going to have situations like that across, I think, the league, and there's going to be a while until you kind of adjust records and expectations based on the 17, soon-to-be 18-game season and what those records really mean and how they're going to kind of reconcile one versus the other. Eric Dickerson's record stands whether Barkley plays or not, in my opinion, because he didn't break it in 16 games. And I don't even know if Dickerson played 16 games that year. You put all these things together, just the lengthening of the schedule gets thinned out to the point where, yes, clearly it's a money grab. That's what you really want. But I feel like the integrity of the game gets diminished for this week. And I'm curious to see what the ratings are going to be outside of Sunday Night Football.
Right. Joe Burrow, he's got Chase, he has Higgins, he's got Mike Gesicki. Their defense, which is playing a little bit better, but they're really an issue. How about that? How amazing is it what he's done to at least get them after a poor start as a team into this position?
You saw an amazing amount of consistency. We've known his ability. We get the value that he's going to bring to his team. And that, of course, is my way of leading into I don't see any particular reason why, by a pure definition of what a most valuable player award would be given for, he should not be in consideration for that. We know that. For those who watched Steelers games this year, we know that because we saw the first time these two teams played.
Right.
Honestly, I've been watching football for a long time. I know enough to know that I know nothing about it. What I do know is what we saw from the Cincinnati Bengals defense in their first game against the Steelers this year was atrocious. I don't know if I have ever seen a defense play as poorly as they did in that game.
Right.
And Burrow had them competing in the fourth quarter. If Cincinnati's defense played at anything resembling a professional level, they probably win the game. There have been a few of those types of games this year.
Yeah.
He does things very well, and to be fair, he turned the ball over 3 times in that game. The Steelers' defense made 3 plays on him. That was about it. But that's modern football. You get 3 takeaways, you're probably going to win the game. Otherwise, a sterling performance from Burrow. Now, I'm not even saying that was one of his best games, but he was outstanding. He has played as well, I think, as any quarterback has in the league overall. And when you talk about most valuable, if they're on the doorstep of the playoffs versus clinching 1, 2, 3 seed like the other ones are, take him off the team, and what is it? I don't think they win 2 games.
Right.
For at least from the level of defense that we saw against Pittsburgh, they're a dumpster fire. And we've seen Cincinnati not play well when Burrow isn't in there before. So it's the value that he brings is incredible. Is he the MVP? I don't know. I'll leave it to people to gnash teeth and argue about it. But he's had a pretty spectacular season, and that's right in line with what we expect from him now. Anytime you play a guy like that, you're in trouble. That's a tough assignment for anybody, and it's certainly going to be a tough assignment for Pittsburgh this weekend. This is the one guy you don't want to see in a situation where they have to win it. In Pittsburgh, just for the sake of history, not that any opponent in the playoffs is the team you want to play, but you really want to play Houston. You don't want to play the other teams in the AFC right now. Right. Just judging by Pittsburgh, the way that they have gone, Houston is a far better matchup for them than anybody else. So this game is critically important. And they've got a pretty tough opponent with something to play for. So it's going to be tough. Interesting Saturday night game. They get another one down on Sunday. What is that, 4 in a row, I think, now?
Yeah.
We'll see how they adjust to it with some time off. But they've played pretty poor football for a month now. Wrong opponent, wrong time. I don't like the feeling of this one at all.
Let me ask you something. You're in a GM position. What do you do with George Pickens? I mean, there's no doubt he has talent, but he's one of those scary type of characters where you don't know if he's going to turn on his own teammates. What do you do with him?
Put me on the spot here. Yes, it doesn't need to be said. The talent is outstanding. I was screaming that to the rooftops draft night. When he was 12, 13 picks away, I was shocked he hadn't been taken yet.
Right.
He has top 15 pick talent.
Right. We
knew that about him. And he was young. He didn't even play very much. So it's kind of like he could get even better. He's probably going to get even better. The natural talent he has for the game overrides even the immense physical talent that he has. Right. He has the little things. He tracks the ball better than any receiver in the league. And I think that was true the second he stepped onto the field in the NFL. Mm-hmm. He is as pure a deep threat as you're going to see. And he's big. He's got long speed. He does everything in that sense well. Mm-hmm. But covering him for this long, watching him, it seems to me this is all he really wants to be. A big play, deep play, combat catch kind of guy. I don't see him as somebody you can reliably get 7-8 targets a game to. They get 6, and he does very well. If they don't want to cover him with a top-high safety, you're going to be in trouble. And the value that brings to everybody else around him is great. But if you don't get him the ball, you're going to have a problem. Mm-hmm. Even when you do get him the ball, it seems like there's a problem. You don't know what's coming. Exactly as you put it. He's kind of scary. If it's me, I would probably do exactly what the Steelers tried to do, which was find a better, more suitable, more stable, long-term wide receiver and not force George Pickens to leverage us next year in contract negotiations. Right. In other words, I would want to go after Brandon Ayuk. You know, if this is this time last year, I'm putting together my off-season plan. Mm-hmm. I would want to target somebody like that, bring them in and give them a big contract. Now I can negotiate with Pickens and we can see what we can come up with. But if Pickens walks or doesn't want the money that I'm willing to pay him, certainly in the form of a guarantee, I've still got somebody. Because I don't know how much money you can really guarantee him. I don't know how long the contract can be with him. You're just in a really tough spot. He's just, I don't know. I'm biting my tongue. I don't want to go too deep into it, but he's not a normal dude. You know, there's something there. Immense physical talent, but how much are you betting on that? You know, he gets his for sure. He's a big time player, but he hasn't contributed to an all-around offense in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't seem like he has the desire to block downfield the way that he used to. I would think with his size, his strength, his explosion, he would be a killer on a hard slant. He never runs that. Mm-hmm. It seems like he wants to be a stationary target and play 500 against his opponent all the time. Mm-hmm. I don't know how good of an all-around receiver he could be. I just know that in the last 3 years he's had the opportunity to become that, and he hasn't. So I feel like somebody's going to pay him that $32 million range a year, and I don't think it's going to be Pittsburgh. They'll get what they can out of him. I don't think they're going to trade him unless they get blown away by an offer. But what they would really like is to add a more stable franchise-level type of wide receiver in this offseason. from free agency. You know, the name I come to is the one we're going to see this weekend. I think the Steelers would absolutely love to have T. Higgins on their team.
Yes, he's a good player.
I'd even go as far as to say I think Cincinnati's going to tag him again just so Pittsburgh doesn't get him. So they can trade him to somewhere that isn't Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh would be an absolutely perfect fit for him. He would get the ball a ton. He would be the man here. He would run all routes, all distances. And with Pickens, they'd have a formidable combination at receiver for one season. Maybe they tag Pickens after that. I don't know. But I would imagine Pickens would be rather upset about the whole thing anyway. But they would need somebody more stable long term, and I think Higgins would be their guy. If they could do that, they would love to do that. They tried to do it with Ayuk. They sniffed around Devontae Adams. They're looking for another guy to pay, and I think that's because right now George Pickens has them under his thumb. There's not really anything the Steelers can do from a leverage perspective. He can, say, look, I'm not signing anything until you give me this. I'll play this year out. You're not going to tag me. You don't have anybody else. There's no other option here. So they're in a tough spot. They need to bring in somebody else. And I think if Higgins sniffs the free agent market, I don't think he's going to be on there for more than 10 minutes before Pittsburgh gives him a deal. If that is what ends up happening, he's going to be a Steeler. But I think the Bengals are going to tag him again and try to trade him, get some assets back because they've got to get a lot younger. But if it's me, I want to bring in somebody like that just because I might tag Pickens 2 years at what would it be, 18, 19 million. I'm good with that right now where I sit, but I'm not giving him 4 years, 32 million per. That's just too much for what we've seen. I need to see him grow up. I need to see him become a team leader. I don't think he can do that.
Right. So this is the NFL has become, instead of trickle down to college and high school, quarterback wise, it's become trickle up. The way high schools play, the way colleges play with their quarterbacks now, and so forth. And we're seeing with guys like Daniels. Now we're seeing it with Michael Penix. I mean, how important has that been that the NFL's been able to adjust its philosophy and think trickle up and not force players to play in a certain way?
That's such an interesting question, mostly because let's look at C.J. Stroud. Not considered to be, at least not a consensus top pick coming out. He goes 2 overall. I don't necessarily know that was like overdrafting, but I don't think people felt that he had an incredibly high ceiling. He tears the league up his rookie year. They gave it to him, Stroud was already elite. Stroud was everything last year. Houston was unstoppable. This is the team of the future. What happened this year? Teams studied the tape that he put out.
Yeah.
And good quarterback, but he's not what he was as a rookie. He's not catching teams by surprise. He's not just, flat out crushing them over the course of a game like he did last year. The game caught up to him. And that's always what's going to happen. Offense is going to be a step ahead of the defense until the defense gets a chance to evaluate what happened and adjust what they're doing. So, in other words, he doesn't get 17 games unchecked and unchallenged. Now he's going to really struggle 3 or 4 of those games, and you'll see his overall production match that. His stats look like that right now. He's doing very well in some areas.
Yeah.
But probably a bit less than he did last season in a lot of other areas. Let's see what happens with Jaden Daniels next year. There's a lot to like about Jaden Daniels. I was a big fan of his. One of the few people that said I'd actually have a very, very difficult time taking Caleb Williams over him. And long term, I still think I might go with Daniels. But you're going to see what's commonly thought of as the sophomore slump. You'll see that with him next year, not because he's bad, but because he got put into a situation and his best asset outside of his natural talent, which both of them have loads of, but you have the element of surprise. You don't have a whole lot of film, and there's not a ton of time in the season to really dissect everything. But by the time the next season rolls around, Dallas is not going to the playoffs. If Mike Zimmer is still their defensive coordinator, I'm sure they're going to spend time watching Jaden Daniels. They're going to figure out what they want to do against him because they have a lot more time to kind of come up with different schemes, Their personnel will change. Some of that is based on their divisional opponent. They know they're going to play Jaden Daniels twice. This is a guy that can do this thing that we want to do against him in particular. Let's sign him. Those kinds of moves come, and then the quarterback has to kind of counterpunch against that. Now, what's the point in relation to your question? You can force the quarterback up. How long do they stay up is the question. You know, it's more about the long-term success. Now, there are plenty of guys that have, phenomenal rookie years or first years, whichever one it is. They might take a little bit of a step back, but they can, ascend their level. On the other hand, you've got Patrick Mahomes, who hasn't had a bad season relative to anything in the NFL, and you've got Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, who were pretty inadequate quarterbacks the first years that they played, and they grew into MVP-level players. Joe Burrow got hurt a bunch early, but was always effective, and when he plays, he's utterly dominant. These are high-level guys. Now, I'm not saying none of the younger guys can do that. I'm just saying, by and large, what we see is the guy that has the really good rookie season tends to take more of a step back, and it's because now they have in that second year, that's when they're paying the price for being put out there early. And there's evidence to show guys that sit and don't play right away can do better when they start, and they can do worse. It's more about what's happening when you're the starter over 34 games, not just he got to sit and watch. Now, game one, he's really good. It's about where he is on game 34 nowadays, in my opinion. Put the whole thing together. Don't look at just any one segment of time. There's just not enough of it out there, but just enough where defenses have caught up to you. They know your tendencies and what is being called for you. They know what you're good at. They know what you're not good at. And then you need to improve your game. You got to get better. You have to continue to evolve and improve yourself and put it back on the defense to try to stop you.
As always, brilliant, my friend. I appreciate you so much. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Neal Coolong joining us this half hour, brought to you by Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Stock up for the Orange Bowl today as we continue on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Great to have you on the show today. Brought to you by Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket, and Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. And Ford Kia Hyundai, best in new inventory, great pre-owned inventory with the Sunbury Motors guarantee. Terrific service department. That backs it up every step of the way. Whether it's quick lane, routine, difficult inspections, they handle it all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Randy in Danville. Hello, Randy. Happy New Year. Always wonderful to talk with you.
No, thank you, Steve. I heard the game on the radio. I heard you call it, and, just the blood pressure goes up when you call it. And,
that's my goal.
Even at 6 o'clock, my blood pressure slowly goes up when you and the team start talking in the pregame. Anyway, Mike, I heard the fella from Arizona call earlier, and he asked about a face mask, I think.
Yeah.
My question was, in the second half, Zakeen Wheatley made that interception.
Yeah.
right? And the way you called it, you said he got to about the 40 or maybe a little bit beyond.
Right
it
at the 40.
Would have been the 40 of Penn State.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. And by the way, I was business partners with a guy. He was watching it on TV, and I had to promise him not to tell him what happened because there's a 25-second delay.
Okay. Yeah.
So I kept quiet, so he wouldn't be disappointed or let down. Well, anyway, when Zakeen Wheatley made that interception, he ran it to about the 40, and of course it was valid interception, but there was something about a face mask penalty, and I was not clear on who made that, who was the victim of the face mask, who did it. So could you clear that up, Steve?
Sure. When he ran it back to the 40, they threw a foul, a personal foul penalty. It was not a face mask. It was what happened was, this is one of those where Dennis Sutton is blocking, and you can tell on the replay that he didn't really look back to see where Zakee was. He knew he was near him because he was coming toward him. So it was like, so he peeled back to get Ashton Genty, and when he did, he decked. I mean, he completely decked Genty. Well, he decked him right when Wheatley hit the ground, maybe a second afterward. That's when he hit him, and Denai just didn't see that Wheatley was down. I mean, you could just tell he was not like this was not one of those intentional. There's Genty, I'm going to get him, but good, because Denai had been getting him good all night. I mean, so it wasn't that. It's just, but because he didn't see that Zakee was down, and you could just see it on the replay, he had no idea he was down. He decked Genty, and so the call was legit, but, I mean, that's the reason why they called it personal foul, because it happened after Wheatley was down.
Do you think it was a fair call by the ref?
Yeah, I do. Oh, sure, I do. It's just, there was no intent on Denai's part, zero. But he also hit somebody after the player was down. And that's the reason why.
Okay.
I mean, and it's just as simple as like the timing of it.
Yeah.
The timing is what got him.
Yeah.
Because he was just trying to block, and it was a pretty good block.
Yeah. When there's a change in possession, I mean, things are going so quickly, things happen. And I think all the fans understand that, and I know some Penn State fans probably didn't, but they're so passionate. The other question I had: how is the health for the next game for Abdul and Denai?
I'm going to have to see, because we got back to the hotel a little bit after midnight Mountain Time, and all of us literally like went to our room, and I didn't come back on the team plane, because what they've done with the two team planes is they put all the players. And when I mean all the players, I mean all the players, because when we travel for the Big Ten, Randy, you're only allowed to bring 74 players. In this case, you're allowed to bring everybody, which means they brought all 120 players, plus their family, plus they all, because look, they put in as much work as anybody. So you're allowed to bring everybody. And, of course, the families. I mean, the coaches' families, which put up with so much, like, dad's not home, so they're going. So we went on the separate charter, the second one that went down. I went commercial and then came back on the charter. So I haven't been around them, and I probably won't be around them until tomorrow, because I've got a game tonight, and they're not doing anything today anyway. But I've got a game tonight, a basketball game. So tomorrow I'll be around them. So I haven't had a chance to see anybody, talk with anybody, get a feel for anything. I did not go down to the locker room after the game. Jack and I literally just walked out and went to the bus, and waited for everybody else to come out. And it's a 45-minute trip from Glendale back to the hotel with a police escort. So it's not exactly, hey, there's some length to this thing.
So you have to go after the information, right, Steve? I mean they don't.
Oh, if I wanted, if I wanted to text somebody right now and get an answer, I could, but I couldn't. But I couldn't tell you on the air either.
Yeah.
I mean,
one more comment then.
Sure, make as many as you want.
I think the two teams now, SMU and now Boise State, I think they've been out-coached. I think this is a really great coaching job that James and his staff have put together. I do. And I hear grumblings about the big ones, but you know what? I think Penn State is getting better and better every game. And
Randy.
So I'm looking for bigger things than what's happened in the past.
Randy, the last two games have been really big games, and they won them both. It's like I was on Sirius XM with Jacob Hester and E.J. Manuel, and they asked me about the big game thing, which is always the common theme. Now, at this point, this was pre-SMU. I said, well, look, he's won a Rose Bowl, a Fiesta Bowl, a Cotton Bowl, a Big Ten championship game before the shenanigans started at Michigan, and he beat Harbaugh 3 out of 4 years. I said, how many big games you want him to win? It's like, and now since then they've beaten SMU. They won the Fiesta Bowl again. They beat Boise State. Now they're in the Orange Bowl against either Georgia or Notre Dame. And, the people that don't like somebody are going to set the bar. They're going to adjust the bar to fit their narrative. I mean, so I always understand that part, and that's fine. If that's the game you want to play and it satisfies you, fine. I don't tolerate it very much. I don't have to tolerate it, but. Yeah, I just sit there and go, great. Yeah, smartest guy at the tailgate. Always, it's a scheme. You don't even know what the scheme is. God, I was there all week. You don't know what the scheme was supposed to be. I always love those guys. It's the scheme. Really? Oh, and it's never the players. It's never the players not executing something right. It's always the coaches. The coaching, like the guy runs the wrong. I don't care what team you're on. I mean, there was a play, I think it was in the Boise State game, where he threw it, I'm talking about Matson, threw it to the outside, and the guy cut inside. Like, oh, yeah, that's the scheme. No, the player just flat out made a mistake, ran the wrong way. I mean, remember I'll give you one that's a Penn State example. Remember the intentional grounding call against Sean Clifford against Auburn, where he just stood in the pocket, threw it deep, and nobody was there? And the SEC crew, the SEC crew called an intentional grounding, which was a horrible call. I mean, you got to have a feel for the game. I mean, he's standing flat-footed, like he intentionally grounded it. What happened was Parker Washington and Jahan Dotson ran downfield. Washington is supposed to cut it to the outside, and then, based on him taking a guy with him, Dotson's supposed to keep going after making a move. Yeah. Well, Dotson went down, and he cut it to the inside. Well, there's nobody down there to throw it to. Oh, but it's the scheme. I mean, it's never it's like, yeah, come on, you guys. We just okay. I love your passion, but enjoy the game and do so with some semblance of common sense.
I mean, look, Ryan Day loses to Michigan 4 times in a row, and they're ready to hang the guy. I mean, Oh, my word.
Nick Saban wanted to meet Jack Ham, so when they were at practice, okay? So I ended up being the beneficiary of being the person that was talking with Jack at the time when Nick Saban came over. So we probably talked to him for maybe 5-10 minutes. And, I was asking him how he liked the new job and so forth. And finally we started talking about coaches. And when we did, he says, I'm sick and tired of hearing about how Ryan Day doesn't win the big game, James Franklin doesn't win the big game. He says, for goodness sakes, I did this forever. He says, you know how many big games you have to win to get to the big game? I'm like, excuse me. So the dude at the tailgate who knows everything about the scheme and Nick Saban, I don't know, which guy am I going to listen to? Which guy am I going to take to heart his opinion on whatever? You? Okay? Who knows what the scheme is? Or you? Or Nick Saban, or as George Paterno called him, Nick Saban. That's true. Nick Saban. Like, oh, no, George, no.
George, you say George Paterno.
George Paterno. Not Joe, George.
Oh,
yep.
Oh, okay.
George called him Nick Saban. It's like, I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Steve.
At least we had a fun, entertaining conversation. I had a blast.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, thanks,
Happy
my man.
New Year to you both.
Happy New Year, Randy. Thanks. All right, we'll wrap it up in a moment here on News Radio 1070 WKOK, brought to you by Sunbury Motors.
There's something to be said about a sale with a handshake, a service technician who really knows what he's doing. They can explain it in English what the problem is. There's nothing better than having that friend you could trust in the area. That's Sunbury Motors, where you get selection, knowledgeable salespeople, and prices that fit your budget, and more important, that friend you can trust. Welcome to Sunbury Motors, Kia, Ford, and Hyundai. You can shop other dealers and compare prices, but at Sunbury Motors, you get their lowest price promise. They research the current used vehicle market and guarantee their used car prices are the lowest. If you find a lower price, Sunbury Motors will beat it. 3 dealers all in one. See their full new and pre-owned inventory at sunburymotors.com. Pick out a vehicle you like and schedule your test drive online. Follow them on Facebook. Sunbury Motors Ford and Hyundai, North 4th Street, Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
Absolutely. Completely in favor of that. Now, it doesn't mean that from time to time where you can sit back and look at play calling and go, really? What was that? And I completely understand and respect that. But there's too much of a simplistic, it's always coaching, it's always the scheme. And it's like, no, players make mistakes. It's like, okay. Like, remember the other night, Drew turned and Singleton went left, and all of a sudden Drew turned, there's nobody there, and then he ran into the line. He picked up 4 yards, right? Remember that play?
I do.
Oh, and then Drew got up and looked at Nick and went, hey, that's on me. I made a mistake. Guys make mistakes. It's like it happens. You know? It happens. It's all right. Now you just have to overcome the mistake. Let's say it ends up in the game of +3 giveaway, takeaway, then now +10 on the year. Now you got Notre Dame today and Georgia. So very quickly, Notre Dame has good receivers, but they don't have any threatening receivers. The 2 running backs that they have, Love and Price. It's interesting how you get a perception watching a game. I'm watching the Indiana game, and Love had the 98-yard touchdown run. I'm like, man, he's got pretty good numbers, whatever. And now Price was, he had that 120-yard run, and you're like, boy, they really ran the ball. You know what's weird? I went back and looked at the stats of that game. Love had 107 yards rushing, and Price had 32. I thought Price ran for like 80 yards in the game. I thought, Love I knew didn't get many more after that, so the 107 sort of made sense to me. But I thought Price ran for like 80 or 90 yards. He had 32. Leonard can run. He's a good thrower, not a great thrower. And again, they don't have threatening wideouts. A good offensive line. And defensively, Watts has 6 interceptions this year, 13 the last 2 years. I mean, you want to talk about a guy that knows where the football is. Now, no Riley Mims, who led Notre Dame in tackles for losses and sacks this year. He's out for the year after that tough injury against Indiana. That's part of the grind of this, is somehow getting through games. Randy asked about denying about Carter, the ability to get through unscathed. Let's go to Georgia. They're not, didn't get through unscathed. They lost Carson Beck in the SEC championship game, so Gunnar Stockton's going to have to play today. Remember, Texas had no video on Stockton. They're not going to go into the game thinking, I wonder what Stockton's going to do. Everything they prepared for was Carson Beck. I mean, that's Georgia's quarterback. They're not changing him out. So, of course, they didn't sit there and start looking at what Gunnar Stockton can do. So it kind of caught them a little off guard. And Stockton came into his credit and did a good job. But Georgia's had trouble running the football this year. ATN is the transfer from Florida, and the freshman Nate Frazier are really good players. But for some reason, they're 15th out of 16 in the SEC in rushing this year. The 2 tight ends, Oscar Delp and Luke Lucky, are very, very good. I mean, they're not Brock Bowers, but they're very, very good. And they have this running back, Cash Jones, a former walk-on, that they kind of use as that third down guy to make some catches. Defensively, Georgia can flat out run. Especially Jalen Walker, number 11. I think he is a really terrific. Got to account for him on every play. Woodring, the place kicker for Georgia, is terrific. He's only missed 2 all year. But the place kicker for Notre Dame, who was good last year, has had a horrible year this year. And then suddenly against Indiana, Toddy hit 2. What, he had 2, 3?
Kickers,
didn't miss. It didn't miss. Didn't miss. After having one of to call his year up and down would be an insult to the word up. He just didn't have a good year. So, I mean, fortunately for them, something tells me the special teams coach was over at the grotto lighting candles before the Indiana game because it worked.
Or the Kenny Dillingham. I guess it couldn't do the Kenny Dillingham where he just asked people to email him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because, again, this guy was a good kicker last year. I mean, good kicker, good numbers, the whole thing. For whatever reason, he just didn't have a great year until they faced Indiana. And in the cold, he had a terrific night right when they needed it. So that's coming up in an hour. Penn State basketball tonight, Jordan Setter 7. Talk show starts at 6:05, leads into the game. I'm sure they'll get some idiot to do both. What?
Bucknell also opens on Eagle 107 tonight at 6:30 down at Lehigh in the Patriot League opener.
Now it gets real for John and company. Here we go. Right? I got a feeling they're going to do well in the Patriot. Just my gut feeling.
Yeah. I don't think Lehigh's as good as Gonzaga, so that helps.
You know, that's why we have you on the show. Analysis like that. That is sharp.